Hey everyone, welcome to another video. After my really sorry gameplay when I first played it, which you can check out above me, I got a little better and finally finished the Resident Evil 4 Remake. So remember to hit that subscribe button because this review will be from a complete newcomer's perspective of this potential Game of the Year contender. So let's get into it. Getting right into it, I have zero nostalgia for Resident Evil 4. I know the original one is one of the most acclaimed games of all time, and I have never really played it. I think I may have tried it for like maybe 5 minutes many years ago, and all I have to say to those people who said that this game did not need a remake, you've got to be joking, right? It is so outdated now. Movement is a chore, and apart from visually, which was far ahead of its time, a remake, I think, while not as drastic visually, will make that massive improvement. A remake was still needed just as much as the remakes for 2 and 3 were needed. My first exposure to playing these games is actually through the remakes. I played Resident Evil 2, which I loved, played Resident Evil 3. Despite the heavy criticism, I still loved it, even though it was a little bit on the shorter side of things. I played Resident Evil 7 for maybe an hour or so because I'm a bit of a wuss and I could not get through the rest of that game because of the type of horror that it presents. It was just a little too much for me personally. And then I played Village, which I would strongly consider to be my favorite in the entire series. It's hard to say because on any given day, my opinion changes quite a lot because the quality for these games is just there, and the remake of Resident Evil 4 added another game to that debate. After all of the changes it has gone through to become a real modern game that feels kind of cutting edge, I completely understand why Resident Evil 4 was as acclaimed as it was back then and why it got lots of 10 out of 10s today. Because the game is just incredible in so many aspects. I don't think the game is perfect. If I had nostalgia for this, I would probably be giving this a 10 out of 10. But there were things in here that did bug me and lowered my opinion of the game just a tad. Resident Evil 4 wastes absolutely no time in trying to get you introduced to the balls to the wall action it delivers. It deviates quite a bit from the pure horror that both 2 and 3 and goes for something a little more action based. I think there is still a lot of horror to it, but it just comes from a slightly different place. Like how intense every situation is. It is very easy to get overwhelmed and die quickly if you're not alert, and that just intensity just keeps your heart rate up. The opening section of the game, which I showed in that gameplay video, was very overwhelming as a newcomer who was still trying to understand the differences this game offers from the other ones. I died a few times and got a little angry. Oh, come on! No! Fuck!
Maybe we should get some air. I'm okay.
But I just got through by the skin of my teeth, and because that opening section is just so intense, it makes facing enemies very daunting later on in the game, and as you're starting to feel comfortable, it adds something new, which makes the game tense again. This really is an excellent game that is well worth purchasing because of how fresh it keeps everything. I think the story, like all Resident Evil games, has a lot of that corny charm which makes it so great, and why there should never have been movie adaptations, because this series was built to be a gameplay experience. It is presented kind of similar to the other games in the series where it's kind of light on story and has you questioning what caused the situation in the area that you are in, like the previous two, and then you meet some fun characters. You then get to the end of the game, you read some of the most interesting files in any game ever, which tell you so much more about what's happening to the characters and what's happening to the area. You then defeat the boss, ride off into the sunset where the night is now over and we're in the morning, and then you get a tease for the next game where you get some major new development for some of the characters. It's a formula I would have thought would get stale by now, especially seeing as this is now my 4th full Resident Evil game, but it still works. I really love the teaser in this, and I'm really hoping that they remake Resident Evil 5, because I just want to punch boulders as Chris Redfield and play a full story in couch co-op. Don't you dare just make it online. Only bring back a real co-op experience with this engine so I can play with my fiance. Anyway, back to the game. It is so fun. This probably has the best shooting out of any game in the series. It's so satisfying, and the guns were just excellent to use. I love the fact that you can use your starting handgun throughout the entire game, which is what I did. The shotgun, machine gun, and rifle were all great to use, and I love the attention to detail. The way that Leon would reload his gun was just insane to look at because the animations were just so intricate. Then we have the setting, which I think was excellent. It trades the confined, claustrophobic nature of the police station and dimly lit rooms for a more wide open area, which I would have thought would have taken away from the tension of the game. But as I mentioned, this game has this intensity to it which just keeps you alert. The sound is another thing that really adds to this experience. This is easily the best sounding game of the year so far, hands down. When you hear the sounds of an enemy in the distance, which gave you a lot of trouble earlier, you get very nervous. For me, that was the chainsaw guys, and as soon as you hear that rumble of the chainsaw in the distance, you were dreading moving forward because you know you are in for a dogfight. Visually, this game is stunning. Once again, it is probably one of the best, or even the best looking game of the year so far, and it's one of the best looking on the PS5. The RE engine is just one of the best in gaming right now, and I hope they keep using it because it just gets better with each and every game that they do. It perfectly complements their stellar art direction, and Leon looks better than ever here. You can see every strand of his hair. Speaking of Leon, he once again just shows me why he is my favorite Resident Evil protagonist. It feels like when he is put in the lead of the game, it feels like those are more mainline games than any other ones in the series for me. I love Jill, Chris, and even Ethan Winters, but Leon to me just elevates Resident Evil a lot in my eyes. I also have to talk about the Merchant, who is awesome. I heard about how he is so iconic, and the line he's most known for,
"Welcome. Ooh, what you buying?"
gets referenced in Resident Evil Village whenever you bump into him. It feels like a relief, similar to something like a bonfire in Dark Souls, where you just have a moment to relax and purchase things to make you stronger. He also has these shooting ranges, which were just a fun little distraction from the main game, and I like going down the elevator and doing all the trials. It was a good time. The enemies in this are excellent. I love the way they look, and how the story of how this town went rabid was interesting enough to keep playing to uncover that mystery. Some are really fun to shoot, and others I absolutely hated running into. The regenerators to me caused me some real headaches. I don't think one ever killed me, but I was always so close to dying whenever I faced one. You get the scope, which helps you kill them, but even so, as someone who doesn't really use rifle weapons too often in games, it's safe to say I really sucked, and it would take me longer than I needed to actually kill them, because for some stupid reason, that was the weapon I chose to put the scope on. We then have the boss fights, which I wouldn't say were my favorite parts to this game by any means. I do think their difficulty was kind of perfect though. They would always have me one hit away from dying when I would manage to just get that last shot off and win. But they pretty much ask you to just run around and wait for an opportunity to attack them. With that mixed element out of the way, let's start getting into the negatives. I think this game has some bullshit difficulty spikes which definitely threw me back to that 2005 era of gaming, because that would happen a lot in that time when a lot of PS2 games were kind of releasing. I used to play Jak and Daxter a lot as a kid, and that section in Jak 2 Renegade, where you had to run away from that tank in that early section of the game, still makes me dread playing that section to this day. This game does have moments like that, and they pretty much all involve Ashley, the character that Leon has to find and protect throughout the game. She is just so useless, and the fact that friendly fire is enabled so you can accidentally shoot her in this chaos where you're getting swarmed by dozens of enemies made some sections really frustrating. There were two that really come to mind here. The first is where you finally find her and Sadler sends a ton of enemies to you and you have to fight through them. This was particularly annoying because it was extremely chaotic and they would always take her away, and sometimes you would make some mistake and accidentally shoot her because you were desperately trying to fight off these villagers. I just found that section so frustrating. The next one is where she has to run around to these two wheels so she can lift a bridge, and you have to shoot these enemies on the floor above to protect her. This may have been my fault, but I did have some terrible ammo management here, and I would always run out of ammo, and all I could do was helplessly watch them take her away, and I would fail the mission. I eventually got through it, but that section really annoyed the hell out of me. And she would always say stuff like this during the game.
You know, I was thinking, we work well together, don't we?
I guess so.
Right? Maybe someday I'll become an agent like you.
Also, there is a small section where you have to play as her. It wasn't difficult or anything. It was tense because she is absolutely hopeless. But I just didn't find that section fun. I think it's kind of odd that this didn't really get brought up in a lot of people's reviews because this seems like the type of mechanic in a game that everyone would hate. I remember when Spider-Man came out, for example, and everyone whinged so much about the MJ sections, but I haven't really heard about how something similar in Resident Evil 4 just got implemented. Anyway, like those MJ sections, it was kind of subpar compared to the rest of the game, and I would have preferred if it wasn't in the game altogether. As a gameplay mechanic, as I said, I don't really like Ashley, but as a character, her dynamics with Leon were really great and helped elevate Leon all the more, and her character was very interesting. I love the dialogue between her and Leon through a lot of sections. And yeah, it was really well implemented. It was just the way that she's woven into gameplay that I didn't like. In terms of just small things, the inventory management is there and it's still really good. It's like a little mini game within the game where you're trying to sort everything out. For those who don't really like that stuff, there is an auto sort button, which I did use from time to time because sometimes I just wanted to get right in the thick of the gameplay. So that is there as a great alternative. And yeah, you can do little side missions in the game to get new weapons and treasures to find. Out of all of the Resident Evil games I played, Village might have the largest map. 7 could be up there too, but I didn't play enough of that to really gauge how big that map was. But Resident Evil 4 Remake is right up there in size. It is really cool because there is also a lot of backtracking that you can do to fight new enemies and get new treasures, which make the game just so much more carefully made, and I really like that. Overall, Resident Evil 4 Remake is definitely up there as one of my favorites in the series. I think the standard is now so high for this series, it's unbelievable. I think the level of consistency this series has is astounding, and as I said before, I really want them to remake 5 and 6, so we have a full series of definitively made Resident Evil games with the most updated standards of technology and gaming. I'm going to give Resident Evil 4 Remake a strong 9 out of 10, and right now it is definitely my game of the year. I also just love the way that you can purchase models and concept art for your perusal through the menu without actually spending your money. That seems like a lost concept, and I wish we could see more of that again. But yeah, I highly recommend this game to you. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. Tell me in the comments below what you think about the Resident Evil 4 Remake, as well as letting me know what your favorite in the series is. I would love to know as well what spin-offs in the series you would recommend, because I really want to dive into those. But as you know, the Resident Evil storyline gets a little bit convoluted as we get later in the series. So I want to know where to start and what ones to try. So please let me know that too. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.